share, if you can, what your testing world looks like when you're working on one of these applications. So maybe start with
Sure.
Luke. Yeah.
So I was just describing, we just redesigned our office to actually pivot around our testing lab, meaning like we have a desk and then 2 tables filled with devices, and then a desk and 2 tables filled with devices, which sounds like a ton of work. But the way I generally do it is I will go and hit those devices when we're getting really close to a major release. And we'll test on fewer up front. So we kind of have like a small limited test set. And then right when we're about to push, we'll go look at everything and just make sure that there's not anything broken in all those different places. And even for the iOS app, there's like 5 or 6, just for the iPhone app, actually, there's like 5 iPhones that we look at stuff now on. Because there's Retina, non-Retina. There's 3.5-inch, 4-inch. There's 64-bit, non-64-bit, which you wouldn't think makes any difference in the world, but actually, there's all kinds of wacky things that don't work the same way on 64-bit versus, like UI. One that we noticed, which is really strange, was like touch targets were off. When we moved to the 64-bit phone, a lot of our touch targets weren't responsive. And weird. We had to just go in and like manually blow them up a bit. So we got Retina, non-Retina, size, and OSs. So we're supporting 5, 6, and now 7. And then you do the combination of those. That's how it adds up to like 6 or 7 just iPhones.
You're still supporting 5.
What about you, Brian?
It's complicated. So due to the nature of PhoneGap, there's many devices, and we've got a wall of phones, and we've automated connecting to it with a system we call Medic. We compile a version for every phone. We force push these installed apps onto all the phones. The apps all launch, and then they launch a web view, which runs our unit tests, which then posts the results back to a couch, which we then aggregate the results from, and we can find out if PhoneGap works. Lately, in most of our team, we tend to just test on the lowest end acceptable device. So I use a 4S for my iOS testing. I've got like a last year's Nexus that I use for my Android testing. That's kind of how I do it while I'm building stuff. If it works there, presumably it's going to be okay on the newer devices. Obviously not always true. And the last little bit that we've been experimenting with is Appium, which is from the same guys that do Selenium, Sauce Labs. It's really cool, and I recommend anybody that's doing mobile check it out. It's a nice way to do test automation.
We use this as well. We use Appium for our test automation.
I'm thinking of actually moving a lot of our stuff over to it, because right now we're a lot of duct tape and Band-Aids, and we want this whole thing as automated as possible. So Appium seems to be solving that better than we're ever going to do. And
They're doing a really good job with that. So we try to do about 12 releases a year for mobile, at least for the apps. And so there's like a heavy testing cycle right when you're about to do a release. And then there's sort of like ongoing testing as you're running. I think one of the key things we did that I would really recommend other people to do is we actually made the base unit of our test an action as opposed to like a screen or a page. This was super important. I didn't realize it when we made the choice, but it's had a huge impact for us. So if you make the base unit an action, you now know exactly the set of actions that are on that page, and you can sort of play those actions. And a sequence of actions is effectively a flow. And we can actually measure all of the metrics for our users, and so we know what the top flows are. So we automate in the order that our users tend to use the flows, just by like metrics distribution. And so on every check-in, a suite of flows is run, which is effectively a sequence of actions. And if anything breaks, then you'll sort of know. And breaking is 2 things. So one is we actually do, for every run, we take screenshots of every screen after every action click.
You're going
and
that
then,
far.
And then we compare the screenshots against the previous run. And if there's more than a 5% image diff, then something broke. That's one thing that we do. And then as we get closer to the major releases, I mean, we still have manual testing. So we do a large amount of sort of manual testing. It usually takes about 3 days to run our full sort of manual regression suite. We also do what we call bug bashes. So we usually bring pretty much like the entire team together, like 100, 150 people. That's not just engineers, but like literally everybody, marketing, whatever, for about a 2-hour period. And it's just like, use it and tell us what's broken. So awesome. It's a combination of like automation that's very metrics driven to like, black box manual testing to like ad hoc random set of people just poking at it until it breaks.